Okay, so welcome to our webinar talking about tendering and how to win more business. My name's Flora Neville and I'm joined today with Peter Johnston. Peter, I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Peter Johnston. I'm one of the field team with Citation ISO certification. So been with the company just under 2 years now, and spend my days really building ISO management systems for clients, auditing systems, the full spectrum, 9,000, 14,000, 45,000. I do quite a lot of work within the 27,001 as well. And before that, I actually either ran businesses or acted as a consultant helping people run businesses. So a lot of experience with ISO over the last, 26 years now when I sit there and think back. And also a lot of experience with regards to tendering. I think back now, the first time I ever submitted a tender was something like 22, 23 years ago now. So hopefully might be able to pass on some good things. I'm looking forward to today.
Fabulous, thanks Peter. And as you can hear, we've got some real expertise here, so make the most of that, guys, and do ask questions as we go. Please, we'll be happy to take that. Okay, so what are we talking about today then? We're talking about the overview of tendering, top tips, guidance on tendering, how to identify the right contracts for your individual businesses, ISOs, SSIPs for the win, common mistakes to watch out for, because unfortunately there's always common mistakes, so at least if you know them, you can hopefully avoid them. And then we've got time for question and answer as well. If you do want further follow-up after today, more than happy to arrange that for you, so you can let me know. I'll give you the opportunity to do that at the end today as well, so not a problem, because we appreciate that obviously we're going to cover a lot of ground today. It also means that you know, there'll be a lot of food for thought, and I'm sure you will have a lot of questions as well, so we can certainly pick that up with you, no problem at all, and talk to you on a one-to-one basis as well. Okay, so briefly about us. I know some of you may be familiar with ourselves, you might not. So if you're not, then just to give you a little bit of an overview, we've been over 30 years in business. We've got over 60 consultants nationwide, and over 30,000 management systems have been implemented. They're tailored management systems for your business, and I think that is the absolute key thing. Is this is about what your business needs are, what you need to put in place to make the business successful and profitable and productive and all the things that you want to be as an employer. And it's about getting that right for you and putting the right things and helping you to implement the right things into your business to achieve that. We offer you complete support, so everything you need to achieve and maintain your ISO certification. And as Peter said there, we cover, you know, the vast spectrum of ISO there as well. So we'll touch on a number of those today. Peter, I'm going to hand over to you now for
Sure,
the questions.
So I think the first thing that we need to look at is key questions. And what we're looking at here is some of the things that are going to come up for you every single time you're looking at doing a tender. So what is your current success rate when it comes to tenders? A lot of people can get really down about this. You know, you're not expecting to win every one. And I think commonly across the spectrum, we normally say if you're achieving 1 out of every 3, then that would be a really good outcome. So don't beat yourself up, but it is a question that you should be asking yourself, what is our current success rate when we actually start applying for these tenders? When was the last time we reviewed our tendering strategy? And I think a bit like with ISO, people talk about strategies and it sounds like you need some big complex document or a huge manual. And that's not really what it's all about. It's about starting to look at how do we apply for tenders? How do we allocate time to do that? Who's responsible for what? Have we planned how we're going to do it? It doesn't have to be anything too complex, but understanding that before you start the process will actually make the process so much simpler when you do it. And the third one we're looking at there on the list is, are there areas in the business where you might benefit from external support? Some of you may have heard the term in the business versus on the business. How much time do I spend in my business doing the day-to-day rather than on the business, looking at the future, looking at the strategic actions of the business? And there is only 24 hours in the day, and unfortunately as human beings we do need a little bit of sleep. So we have to prioritize. And we also have to look at what our skill base is. And if your skill base is running your day-to-day business, if it would be very difficult to ask someone to come in and substitute for you for that while you do tenders, then it is often worth looking at external support, people who've been used to writing tenders, who write them day in, day out. So look at what external support is available. Have you ever dealt with a local authority? They are beasts on themselves, you know, they work in a completely different way to everybody else. And if you've never had any experience of that, it can become frustrating, it can become difficult. It's a bit like learning a new language sometimes. Once you know how the local authority works, everything can run a lot smoother. So again, it comes back to this external support if you don't have any experience of that. Another thing to ask yourself is, how are we going to demonstrate quality assurance? And it's not just about ISO. ISO 9001 for quality assurance is great, but it's actually thinking about how are we going to be able to demonstrate to the person who's submitting the tender or who's asking us to submit the tender that we're able to give good quality in whatever product or service that we're supplying. And lastly, are you aware of different types of tenders? There's different types of tenders come out from different people. They come out in different formats. Some of them are fixed prices, so you know what price you're going to have to go in at before you start. Some of them you have to submit lots of documents, some you don't, some are much quicker. And we'll have a quick look through that today. But are you aware of the different types? Are you aware to go to look at them? So they're the kind of things that you should be asking yourself. So looking at each one individually there, an introduction to tendering, identify the things that are right for you. I've seen far too often too many people start looking at things that are not particularly right for them. So that's one thing that we'll be looking at. Expressions of interest, we'll be looking at expressions of interest. Pre-qualification questionnaires, sometimes they're required, sometimes they're not, and also invitation to tenders. So identifying the right contracts for you. Again, as I just said, you know, I've been in business a long time, and you often see people, especially when they're new to business, that they're desperate to win tenders, they're desperate to expand the business, so they start applying for lots of different things. Ask yourself the key questions. Am I eligible? Some tenders will state that you must have your ISO in place, or you must have an insurance policy of £10 million or something, or they might say that you have to have been in business for a minimum of 3 years. So ask yourself the key question before you start. You don't want to be wasting your time. And the more specific you can be, the more successful you're likely to be when you do apply. So don't waste your time. Am I eligible to bid? Do I have the right experience? Another one there is, do I have the capacity to meet the tender requirements? We go out and we spend so much time and effort. We fill in all the forms. We do any meetings that we need to do. We put so much effort in, we win it. We go home, we open the champagne, and the next day the problems start because we haven't thought about the capacity that we're going to need. And it's not just about even people or resources. It could be about financial resources. So what am I going to have to need to consider if I'm successful? Will I have the cash flow to be able to go and buy the equipment that I might need, or increase the number of people that I employ? They're the kind of things that you need to be doing and asking yourself to enable you to identify the right contracts. So when and where do I find suitable contracts? For people who are old enough to remember, I remember traipsing down to the library in 1998 and filling a form in and having an interview and getting on a portal, which was an EU portal, that would send me an email every day with about 500 potential tenders on there, of which absolutely none of them were any use to me. But that was the way we used to do it. It's totally different now. There's lots of different ways you can find opportunities out there. So local authorities will often have lots of smaller tenders. They'll have online portals. You can register. You receive certain email updates when tenders are available through that local authority. You've got public sector contracts. The easiest way to deal, I find, with public sector contracts is go direct to the gov.uk website. On there, you will find that there's two things you can sign up for. One is called Contracts Finder. And what that does, it's an online search function, and it will identify any current contracts that are available of £10,000 or more. If you're looking for the larger tenders, on the same website, you'll actually find a link which will take you to a portal called the Find a Tender service. And that identifies any tenders that might be suitable for you of 115,000 or above. And that's the one that's actually replaced the EU daily tender service. Since Brexit, we're not a member of the EU, so the actual find a tender service, and the way to get on that is, as I say, through the gov.uk website. There's also commercial companies out there. Comes back to this, using your time in the right way. Commercial companies out there for a fee will go out, will look, will identify tenders, and they've probably got the experience, so they know exactly where to look. They're able to identify what are your skills, what is your skill set, and sometimes they can do that even better than you because they're being objective. They can actually look, they understand what the person releasing the tender is going to be looking for. So you might think you're perfect for certain things, but actually these commercial companies might be able to advise you that you should be looking at different things or increasing the strength before you go for them. We've put a couple of handy online resources there, Tracker Intelligence and Tenders Direct and Your Tender Team. They're not the only ones. They were 3 that we thought were useful for putting on the screen, but don't feel like they're the only ones. There are lots and lots of them available out there, so feel free to have a look around the web. So you're currently on mute?
Unmute, yeah, I hit unmute, but it didn't unmute. But thank you, Peter. Repeat myself. Thank you, Peter. Expression of interest, then, guys, or EOI, as you may be familiar with it. Showing an expression of interest obviously lets the buyer know that you're interested in submitting a bid and doing business with them. The sooner you do it, the sooner you can get started on getting your policies together, so you are in the best place possible to produce a high quality bid. And that's the key thing, is it's that preparation, having things in place, having it ready to go as and when you need things. Market engagement, virtual events happen where they tell you about the tender and its requirements, and we're seeing that more and more now. You may well have participated in something like that. One thing to note is what we've popped there in the bottom is, once you've expressed interest, don't worry if you're under no obligation to proceed, and if you wish to later on opt out of that, then you absolutely can do that. So just to be mindful, don't worry you've committed to something that you then might change your mind about. That's not an issue. PQQ, or pre-qualification questionnaire. Something you've got to fill in at the beginning of the tendering process, and typically requires you to include things like confirmation you meet the minimum standards required for the project. So as Peter mentioned earlier on, it's being clear that you're eligible, you've got all the details. All the rest of it is make sure that you meet the minimum standards required, because if not, then you're putting a lot of time and effort into something that's not going to be very fruitful. A top level description of your experience, your skills and your resources, information on your health and safety policies and procedures. Again, this is the kind of thing that you need to have in place, ready to go. So as and when you need it, you can then pull that information out. And for those of you that are clients of Citation, you will know the importance of having that information at your fingertips so that you can just pull it through when you're required to do so. Financial and insurance information, very similar. Again, look at having all that in place, ready to go, so that when you need to, you've got the backup there, and any other certifications you have in place as well. Now, a PQQ is designed to let your potential customers know all about your business before they decide whether or not to formally invite you to bid for a project. So, and it also lets the customer know that you meet obviously the minimum standards. As I said, it will ask for core business details in order to consider the application, and it's often is used to shortlist suppliers when there are a large number of applicants. You might also hear it referred to as a selection questionnaire, or an SQ. They require the same level of detail then, but request information from suppliers in staged questions. So in regards to certification, we will, or Peter will, not we will, the royal we, Peter will take you through the ISO certifications. Thanks, Peter.
No problem. We've got 4 of the main ISO certifications there shown on the screen, and just wants to run through each of them. So ISO 9001 for your quality management, we have seen for many, many years now, it's often a prerequisite for tenders. So be prepared for that. And really, what's it all about? 9001, it's all about showing that you've got commitment. It's commitment from the organisation towards quality and quality management. And what it does, as what any ISO does, is it provides you with a framework. It provides you with the framework of how you're going to operate to ensure high quality. The other thing that it shows anyone who is asking you to tender or allowing you to tender is, as a part of ISO, you have to do regular internal audits and you have to be regularly externally audited. So not only does it show that you've put the framework in place for 9001 for quality, but that you've actually been checking that on a regular basis yourself, and actually that the external organisation has been coming and auditing you as well. And as anyone here who's successfully achieved any ISO certification, you'll be used to the plan, do, check, act scenario of how an ISO system works. And the fact that you are continually doing that each year and you're checking how you're getting on and then you're acting accordingly ensures that you're continually improving. And I think that spells a lot to anyone, any organisation who's receiving your tender application. Now, 14001 has less so in the past actually been a prerequisite for tenders, but it's definitely becoming more and more of a common theme now. There's this, what they talk about with the green revolution, you know, McDonald's getting rid of all their plastic straws, you know, everyone is now having to think about the environment. We are only here, we have only got one world. And I think more and more people are starting to pay a lot of attention to that now. So it shows that you've got corporate responsibility. It shows that you're caring about your environmental situation. The other thing that people don't often think about with 14001 is it shows legal compliance. So as a part of your ISO 14001, with your internal audits, with your external audits, a big part of that is actually about legal compliance to environmental legislation. So if you're going for any form of tender, be that whether it's in something like the waste industry or the water industry or many other industries that have an effect on the environment, the ability to be able to demonstrate very quickly that you are compliant can actually stand really well in your favour. 45001, health and safety. This isn't just about construction sites. ISO 45001 is not just about people who could potentially get hurt in accidents. It's about the well-being of your people. And I think more than any of them, it literally flies a flag above your organisation to say we actually care about our people and we've got commitment to our people and their safety and their well-being. Not only that though, I think what organisations find when they implement ISO 45001 is things like accidents, incidents, sickness levels. It's amazing how well that they can be reduced because of the way that you've implemented 45001. And the last one is 27001. Up until probably the last 10 years, no one had ever heard of it. Since 2013, 2014, it's become more and more prominent. We're now seeing in certain sectors it is a prerequisite for a lot of tenders, especially things like the care industry. If you imagine the care industry is going to be receiving a lot of information from the authority about the potential clients, and having a system in place that shows you are managing your information security, that you care about your information security, and that you've put that framework in, is now becoming more and more a prerequisite. Show that you've got it before we start giving you the information. When you look at things like data breaches and the horrible news and horrendous news in the newspapers about data breaches, it's not normally the organisation that's done it, it's someone that they've subcontracted some service to. And that's why when you apply for your tender, the organisation that's allowing you to tender is going to be really, really interested. How are you going to protect the information? Because it's possibly not your organisation that's going to end up on the front page of the paper, it's actually their organisation. So that's where they're so keen to enable or to ensure that you've got that put in place. What I would say about all of them, they're only a framework. They give you the skills and the tools and the ability, and it is built very bespoke. You know, when we start the process here, we talk about consultancy, and the first part of consultancy is consult. So we do speak to you as an organisation and make sure we implement it in a way that's right for you. But it's not a golden key. It's like a driving licence. You've got the piece of paper, but now you actually go out and you have to implement it. You have to learn even more. You have to continue to improve, just like you did when you passed your driving licence. We all got that piece of paper saying we could drive, but actually when we look back, I don't really think we're any good, were we? So don't expect it to be a perfect thing, but just treat it as the framework, implement it well, implement it properly, and it's a fantastic tool when you go for your tenders. And I'll pass over to you, Flora, with regards to SMAS.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with SMAS, and it is obviously, SMAS, I should say, sorry, is short for Safety Management Advisory Services, and it's a nationally recognised health and safety accreditation that it's used for you to demonstrate your business health and safety standards, and, you know, given main contractors, like Peter was talking about there, confidence when it comes to your competence and, you know, what you've got in place, and you know, that it's part of your business is the key thing. It does give you that competitive edge when it comes to submitting tenders and pre-qualification questionnaires, and saves you time in doing so as well. I think, you know, we were doing another tendering webinar this morning, and we were talking about that, about, you know, it really used to give you the competitive edge. For a lot of places now, it's you know, it's mandatory that you have things like this in place, and that's where I think it's changing a little bit as well. So it is making sure that you've got the things in place to ensure that you are in the running for tenders. SMAS WorkSafe is a registered member of the Safety Schemes and Procurement, or SSIP, as you may well know it, which is obviously endorsed by the Health and Safety Executive. The key thing about this is that it helps you through the process from start to finish. So, you know, you've got how-to support, and there's the SMAS portal, that kind of thing, and you've got an interactive application that asks you questions that are relevant to you as well. So again, it's back to that time saving. We're all trying to be time saving, and because employers are always time short, so anything that, you know, is time saving has got to be good. The other kind of things as well from citations point of view is that it gives you access to things like meet the buyer events and new tender opportunities, and that kind of thing as well. So there's a variety of different aspects to it, but just to give you an idea of, you know, what it is. There are lots of benefits, obviously, and Peter is going to give you some of those benefits too. Thanks.
Sure, thanks. I think some of them we've covered over the last two slides, actually, when we've talked about the benefits of ISO and SMAS, but some of the ones that we wanted to highlight here specifically is points. I'm not sure everyone is aware that when you submit a tender application, obviously, often there is a point scoring mechanism. And with the point scoring mechanism for things like having ISOs in place, having SMAS in place, will gain you points. And if it's a situation where they point score everybody and then they only actually look further at the top 3 or 4, then having those points in place gets you through the door, gets you to the next stage. Having a competitive advantage, you know, if it comes to the last day and there's 2 people that look exactly the same and one's got ISO or one's got SMAS and the other one hasn't, then obviously it can give you that competitive edge. Marketing, as a part of your achieving of these different certificates, you'll be given digital assets, you'll be given logos that you can use on vans, you can use on your website. And often I find if you're going for a tender, it's nice to think that people might have already at least seen your logo or heard of your company or seen something on social media or a van driving around or something where they can actually affiliate, oh yeah, I've heard of this company. So having that ability to market using the different standards is quite useful. Cost savings, something I get asked every day from clients is, you know, does ISO actually end up costing us any money? And in the short term, yes, and in the long term, no, it normally pays back with cost savings. So because as a part of that, managing your business in your new framework and doing everything right, what it does is it allows you to identify those cost saving opportunities. Efficiency and productivity, as I say, it's all about a framework. One analogy that I use for a number of years is imagine trying to build a house. If you went out and you started to build a house the first time, it's a bit like running a business. You have to be able to do a bit of everything. But actually, if someone had come along and drawn the blueprint for you and told you where to run the pipes and told you a good way of installing the plumbing or installing the electrics, it would make your life so much easier. It's not a case of us coming doing the job for you. It's just making sure that we point you in the right direction and put that framework in place. It saves you crazy amounts of time and actually increases your productivity significantly.
Brilliant.
So the important bit, if you like, the invitation to tender, you get that email back, you've passed the pre-QQ stage, you get all excited, you've now got your invitation to tender, and actually all that means is, we've now got to start doing a bit more work. So when we start thinking about how we're going to do our invitation to tender, we talk there about case studies. Having case studies where you can demonstrate it's not about what service or product you're able to offer, it's about how did that affect people? How was that received by the person that bought or subscribed to your services or whatever? So having case studies that show not just this is what we can do, but this is how it actually affects the end user is really, really important. The other thing I would say about case studies is make sure they're relevant. You know, if you're applying for a tender with a local council, don't start giving a case study for the local scout group because it's not particularly going to be relevant. Also have them pre-prepared. In organisations, start to think about when you work with a client and it goes really well and they've taken on or given you a challenge that you've never had before and you've been able to overcome it. Start to think about those at the time of them happening and start to write up case studies so that when you're going for your tender applications, you're not suddenly scrapping around thinking, who can we write about, who can we include, that you've actually got a selection of them that you can just choose from. Detailed method statements, again, making sure that you've got all those pre-prepared, making sure that you've got all of them available, but make sure you include them. Further details on why you're most suitable for the project. This is your only opportunity to shout about yourself. I think as human beings, especially as people in the UK, we're not often that good at trying to pat ourselves on the back. It sometimes feels a little embarrassing. Sometimes we wonder whether we even need to say it because they should know. Well, actually, they may not know. So make sure you use every opportunity to say how good you are, why you're most suitable for this. Quotation. Not all tenders will require a quotation, but it'll be within the pack if you do need to do it. But make sure you submit it and make sure that you submit it in the right format. So ways of being able to stand out, outline the commitment to project delivery. It's showing just how committed you are as an organisation that this is the most important thing. To them, they want to feel that you are only interested in them. They're not interested, they don't care if you've got 50 tenders already operational. They want to feel special. We all want to feel special when we buy a service. So make sure that you're able to show that you're committed to their project and their project delivery. Explain how you're different. If you're no different from any of your competitors, then it's only really going to be based on price. So you have to be able to explain why you're different. And again, don't feel like they might know or should know. Make sure you reinforce it. And the last thing on there is about benchmarking pricing. And there's two sides to this. You need to benchmark your pricing so that you don't go in too low, and then you'll find that you've got a contract in place that you wish you didn't because it's not profitable. But also you don't want to be going in ridiculously high and then just get laughed out the door before you've even started. So it's often good to do some form of benchmarking exercise. So we've received the invitation to tender, we've thought about everything, we've started to collate it. How do we actually complete our bid? The first thing is make sure it's accurate. I spend my entire day sat in front of a computer writing documents or reviewing documents or writing reports, and you'd think after the number of years I've got under my belt and the number of computer programs I've got that are checking, every single piece of work I do still goes to the office for a third-party check. No matter how many times I run things like spell checkers or whatever, you would be amazed how many times they find a spelling error in it. So get somebody else to proofread it before you send it. Make sure that you've got it in the right format, a logical format. If they've told you what order to include your documents, make sure you include it in that order. If they've told you that it has to include 8 things, make sure that you've got all 8 things. So just make sure that it's accurate, that it's logical. Transparent. We talk about jargon. Often, especially in certain industries, you might be tempted to start using jargon because you use it every day. But don't think the person who is opening the tenders is actually the person who even understands that jargon. Often in local authorities or public sector, you'll find that the first person who sees and reads your tender doesn't even understand what they're reading some of the time. So if you put it in jargon, they're just going to discount you before they've even got to the next stage. So really think about, is it transparent? Is it easy to understand? Make sure it's thorough, do your research, understand exactly what they're wanting. Think about how can I show them that I understand? It's not just about, yes, I understand what they're looking for, but how do you demonstrate that? How are you able to show them that you do thoroughly understand what they're looking and you care about it? And lastly, engaging. I often think a tender is a bit like job applications, and we've all seen people apply for a job where it says, please find and enclose my CV. And we know that they send that letter out to 1,000 people today. And then we see people who apply for things who, in their covering letter, they actually use the words that you used in your advert. And it proves that they do care, that they are engaged, and possibly you're the only one that they're applying for today. It's exactly the same with tenders. If it looks like your tender application was a cut and paste of the one that you didn't win last month, chances are you won't win again. So make sure that it's able to show that you are engaged, you are caring about this, you've put the effort in. And they're the best ways for you to complete your bid.
Thank you. Okay, so some commonly used terms, steps in the tendering process. I think it's worth just highlighting these in case you come across them, and then you know what they are. So DPS is a dynamic purchasing, so that's open for a set period of time, normally the whole contract period, so suppliers can join at any time. AQP is any qualified provider, so that's based on a standardized service for ease of comparison. So all bidders who meet the requirements are then invited to bid. SQ, which I mentioned earlier on, so when I was talking about PQQ, I mentioned that. Similar, same level of detail and things, but request information from suppliers in staged questions, so a little bit different. RFP is request for proposal. Again, we mentioned that when we're talking about invitation to tender. Invites multiple proposals from bidders detailing the proposal and costings involved. It's probably less restrictive than an ITT and offers the chance for creativity, though it may have word limits or formatting rules and things like that that you might have to adhere to. And we often do, we see it in construction, but often it's maybe in more creative industries and things like that, different ones. So again, you might never come across these, or you might, but it's just so you've got some knowledge of them as well. And an RFQ, request for quotation, often for a standardized product or service, so it's straightforward to compare, where the buyer has a clear idea of the work that they want. Okay, here are a couple of example tenders. So the one on the left there is Dretford Town Council, as a replacement of some play equipment in a park. Now you can see quite clearly there, where we've highlighted that in yellow, the tender requirements, and part of those requirements are copy of your company health and safety policy, example method statement, and example risk assessment. So it's, you know, key to have all these things ready to go. You don't want to be starting doing any of this, and I'm sure you won't be, because you'll have all these things in place, but make sure they are up to date, make sure they are, you know, comprehensive, they do and say and, you know, demonstrate what they need to show that you're competent, to show that you're a good organisation, to prove that, you know, you've got the right things in place and that you are an organisation that people want to work with. So get those things in place prior to, you know, being in the situation where you need them. And, you know, it is, you're going to have these things in as standard, hopefully. But it is making sure that they're the best they can be is the important thing. You can see there on the right hand side, Shropshire Council tender response document, and that just highlights that, you know, they are asking about accreditations and quality assurance, so your ISO, your SMAS, all the rest of it. So again, you will come across these things. You want to be able to put the right things in there that do make you stand out. And, you know, they are looking for these things nowadays more and more. And Peter mentioned that earlier, that, you know, some of the ISOs that have maybe not been on the radar just as much in years gone by, that certainly are on the radar now. So it's important that, you know, you're thinking about your ISOs. If you've not got any in place, then what ones would, you know, would be best for you, and what do you need to do is the key thing to be thinking about. I'll give you back to Peter for some common mistakes that hopefully you can then avoid.
Well, I guess we're all familiar that we actually learn from our mistakes quicker than we ever learn from anything. But I think actually the key to it is learn from other people's mistakes, because that means that you've had the learning experience without actually having the problem in the first place. So some of the common mistakes that we see, scattergun approach, you know, people applying for tender after tender after tender. not putting in the time, not choosing the ones that are right for them, not choosing the ones that are actually fit their skills, expertise, resources right. Too many people just sit there applying. No wow factor. We have to appreciate that the person receiving these tender applications, they could have 5, 10, 15, 30. How are you actually going to stand out? Missing the big picture. Actually understanding what are they trying to achieve, why are we trying to achieve it, what do we do as a business, and it comes back to what I said earlier. It's not just about what service or product you're able to offer, it's how is it actually going to affect them. So understanding that big picture and going above and beyond. We might sit there and say, well, people get what they pay for or whatever, but the reality is these days we have to go above and beyond, because if you're not prepared to go above and beyond, somebody else will. So there's some of the common mistakes that we see. We talk about a document library, saving you a lot of time. And I often call this is not the previous tender folder. People will say, oh yeah, I've got one ready to go. It's the one that I lost last year, and I'm just gonna, I'm gonna change the date on it and resubmit it. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a document library which contains up-to-date financial information, up-to-date insurance information, so that you're not having to go and look for things. We have our own in-house system called Atlas that is provided to all of our clients. And that can often be really useful because you know exactly where to go to find copies of your certificates or your logos, or where your audit results were last year, so that you can actually use some of these things straight away within your tender. And the last thing is testimonials. It comes back to what I mentioned earlier about, as Brits, we don't like sitting there and patting ourselves on the back. And it can sometimes feel awkward asking a client for a testimonial. But the reality is, if you've done a good job, why not ask for one? Not everyone might give you one, but the more that you can get, the more that you can then use, and you can use the ones that are most relevant. So if you're going to a local authority for a particular tender and you've had testimonials from previous local authorities, that will actually stand you in so much good stead. Whereas if you're going for a tender with a large blue chip organisation, then again, have you got any testimonials from a similar size organisations? And it's similar to the case studies. Make sure they're relevant and make sure they demonstrate exactly what you're looking for. But don't be afraid to ask and keep them up to date. There's nothing worse than receiving a document or a testimonial that's 6 years old. If you haven't done a good job for someone in the last 6 years, chances are we don't want you in your tender. So think about that as well, keeping everything up to date.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah, that's great, but it's way out of date.
So I mentioned briefly there about Atlas. What does Atlas allow you to do? Multi-site engagement and multi-site management. So what we have is we have one Atlas platform, and basically there's lots and lots of different modules. So we have ISO, we have training, we have health and safety, we have HR. And what you're able to do is you're able to cherry pick the bits that work best for you. You're able to load them onto your Atlas platform. It's one single place for you to go. You can provide a variety of different information, and you can actually invite all your teams. So we've got organizations who use it who are in different countries, organizations who are one-man bands, right the way through to people who've got hundreds of thousands of employees. So that's what is really good with the multi-site management. It's safe, it's secure. I come back to what I was mentioning earlier with these tender applications. People are conscious about where is the information going. So you can give the right access to the right people. You can ensure that all your data is safe in there. And one of the big parts of the Atlas platform is that there is certified training available. So it's not just a case of, here's a short training course and we're going to give you a certificate with our name at the top of it or your name at the top of it. A lot of the training courses are formally certified. They are CIPD points scored and things like that. And it allows you to be able to manage the evidence quickly. So if you're applying for a tender and it says, can you demonstrate that all your people have asbestos awareness, or that all of them are aware of confined spaces, or that they've all had fire training or basic first aid, you're able to literally press a button and be able to see it straight away. So it is a really useful system. And it's not just about what size of organisation, it can be useful for all.
Okay, so thanks, Peter. Other considerations then. So I know Peter will have mentioned a number of these along the way as well, but have you double and triple checked the quality of your submission? And Peter says he doesn't send anything out without somebody else checking it, and it's so true, because sometimes when you look at things, you've looked at the same things over and over again, you're not seeing everything in it. So do make sure that you get it checked, to make sure that it's the best it can be. You want to be proud about what you're sending out as well. You don't get the chance for resubmission, so make sure what you're sending out is what you want it to be and what you want it to look like. It's your best. It has to be the best it can be to be in with a chance at the end of the day. If you lose a tender, I think the key thing is always get feedback. Find out why you didn't win. Is it something that you can improve, you can change, you can work on for next time, so you're not caught out again? And it is important, and again, you mentioned it at the beginner, Peter, that people do get very down with losing, but a win ratio of 1 in 3 would be considered good. So don't be disheartened. You're not going to win them all, but equally you want to make sure that you're winning some of them. So that's why it's important to get the right things for your business. You can challenge your procurement process if you think it is flawed or unfair. And so again, that may be the case. Do you have the resources, capacity and experience to deliver the tender? References and case studies will be required for most tenders. So, can you commit to the contract while running the other areas of your business, no matter what challenges come up, what you're faced with? So again, just think about that in terms of resource, and are you taking on team members, hiring equipment, whatever that may be and whatever that may involve. But just think about what it is that you need to be committing to, and then you've got to be able to to deliver the tender and continue the other areas of your business at the same time. So just be mindful of that and think about it as well. Do you need to consider outsourcing? Using external professionals, and whether that is bid writing or whatever it might be, it's worth looking at it to see, okay, can you, it's like everything, can you enlist the help of the experts to help you to get where you need to be? You're running a business, you can't be an expert in every other aspect of something that's might be involved in the process. So look at using external professionals and it's like we're talking about there with ISO and all the rest of it. You can tell Peter is an absolute expert in that, so you need that expertise on board to get what's required. Have you reviewed your HR documentation, your contracts, your handbooks, your policies, to reflect any key changes to the way you're now working? So again, these things need to change, and often we go into organisations and they've got contracts, they've got handbooks, they've got policies, but are they up to date, and are they reflective of what is actually happening in the business at that time? Are they reflective of how people are working in the organisation? And that's the key thing. They need to be up to date. They need to be in line as well with, there's loads of legislative changes and compliance changes in 2023 and 2024. So again, this is the time to be reviewing and updating your documentation, making sure that what you've got is right. And it needs to reflect in the way that you work. Do you have a full set of up-to-date and compliant health and safety policies and procedures, including a business continuity plan? And that is a question to ask yourself and check, because we assume you think, well, yeah, of course I do. But actually, sometimes when you go and check these things, are they up to date? That's the important thing. I don't doubt you will have health and safety policies and all the rest of it, but it's whether or not they're up to date and in line with current legislation, and they're compliant is the key thing, because the last thing you want to be doing is submitting something that is clearly not current and not compliant, because you will absolutely have done yourself a huge disservice there and be sent probably back out the door. Tendering and employee engagement. I probably don't need to highlight the importance of training and development and engagement. And all these things go absolute hand in hand. Your employees need to have the required skills. They need to have the knowledge for the role that they do. Your team is your biggest asset in your business. You need to look after that asset. And if you're not training them and developing them and giving them the right opportunities and all the rest of it, then you're not looking after that asset in the business. So think about what training you do at the moment. Is it sufficient? Is it enough? Have you ever asked your employees? And engaging with your employees and actually asking them things, it can work wonders, because they feel like they have a voice, they feel valued. And again, you were just talking about that. People want to feel valued, people want to feel important. Your team need to as well. They need to feel like they are properly trained, they know what they're doing, they have the right skills and knowledge and all the rest of it to do the best job they can. And if they've got that, there is, then you're going to hopefully get the best job you can out of them. But you need to have the right people in there. Yeah. If you've got bad workmanship, shoddy work, whatever you want to call it, and that's been completed by unengaged, unmotivated team, then your reputation and your future success in winning tenders is absolutely going to be affected. So reputation is a huge thing. You cannot buy it though, so you need to create that. Yeah, you've probably spent a long time building it, blood, sweat, tears, days, weeks, months, years, and somebody can ruin it pretty quickly. So, look after that eyesight, look after your team, make sure they are adequately trained. And stress and anxiety is a big thing right now. We talk a lot about mental health and well-being. Again, all these absolutely go hand in hand. But stress and anxiety can often be caused because people don't have an understanding of what they're doing, or they don't have the tools to do the job, or they're not clear about what their role is in the organisation, what's their responsibility, all these things that we could talk a lot about. But just make sure, and that's where things like performance reviews, work reviews, catch-ups, all these things are really important. And doing things like refresher training, and updating and changing training as well, as and when things in the business change, or legislation, or whatever else as well. And so just make sure that you've got support in place. Yeah, so an employee knows what to do, knows who to speak to. If somebody is struggling with their well-being or their mental health, again, all these things have an impact in your organization, and do have an impact on things like tender and all the rest of it. So it is about making sure the core is absolutely correct. So look at, are there other things, e-learning, etc., that you can offer your employees to give them support and guidance and all the rest of it, and look at your ongoing support for them, and reviewing and all the rest of it, and engage with them, engage with your team. Your team have a lot of knowledge, they probably see things you don't, or have some ideas that you maybe don't, and sometimes that fresh eyes and different ideas and creativity as well can make all the difference in how your business runs. Is absolutely key. So don't forget about that aspect of it, is what would say. Peter, I'm going to hand back to you for the Cyber Essentials.
Sure. Another item that comes up a lot in tenders is things like Cyber Essentials certification, or even Cyber Essentials Plus certification. And speaking from someone who deals with 27001 from an ISO point of view, which is all about information security, often people will say to me, what's the difference between Cyber Essentials and ISO 27001? And Cyber Essentials is more about looking at the technical controls. So looking at the physical doing of the technical controls. So it looks at things like firewalls, secure configuration, access control, malware protection, that kind of thing. And the reason that organizations are starting to ask for it more and more is similar to the 27001. It's making sure if you're going to be looking after their information, looking after their data, they want to know that it's safe and secure. And with Cyber Essentials, it has been seen that people with Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, 80% prevents 80% of the common cyber attacks. Keeps businesses compliant with all of the legislation, because you're going through regular reviews, regular updates, etc. And it allows you to gain a really high level and thorough understanding of the risk. One thing specifically about tenderings is Ministry of Defence. We're now starting to see that it is commonly a prerequisite for all tenders of the Ministry of Defence. So not just asking, have you got ISO 27001, have you got the management system in place to manage it? but can you actually demonstrate that you are doing the technical things? Can you show that you're doing everything on a day-to-day basis to protect their information? And I'm quite sure if the Ministry of Defence are currently using it for their contract bids and their tenders, then you'll probably find that it'll flow down the stream. So we'll start to see it with right the way through to local authorities over the next few years. Cyber Essentials is not my key subject, so if anyone does have any questions or queries specifically about Cyber Essentials, reach out and we can put you in touch with someone who absolutely lives and breathes it, and they'll be able to give you a lot more information on it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Peter. Okay, so I know we've covered a lot of information, probably thrown a lot of information at some of you who are maybe just starting out on this journey. And, you know, hopefully we've given you some food for thought for those of you that are already on the tendering journey and, you know, want to improve and hopefully get some tips and hints and all the rest of it, which I'm confident you have. I know though there are going to be questions, so feel free to put those in there. We have got a few questions that have come directly to myself, so I'm going to ask those now, predominantly of Peter. Lucky you. But and if there is anything, oh, there's one just popped in there right now. So what is the average success rate for tenders?
As I think we said during the presentation, if you were achieving a success rate of 1 in 3, you'd be doing well. It's difficult to say about average success rate for tenders. Personally, I would be saying if you're doing everything right, you know, if you're making sure that you're only applying for the ones that you're absolutely perfect for, you know, don't try and put a square peg in a round hole, it won't fit. So if you're making sure that you're doing all of your background checks, that you're making sure you meet all of the minimum criteria, if you're making sure that you are absolutely perfect for this opportunity, and then you're successfully putting together your bid, you're making sure that you stand head and shoulders above everyone else, then 1 in 3 is easily achievable and potentially even better than that. So the people who might say to you, oh, we only achieve 1 in 100 are probably the ones who are applying for 100 a week. So cut down the number you apply for, only go for the ones that are absolutely right for you. And I think you'll find that 1 in 3 is achievable and potentially even better than that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter. In terms of ISO, somebody is asking, what does having an ISO do for me internally as well as tendering for business?
I think it comes back to what I was mentioning earlier about if you were, you know, I love DIY, I love building work, and that's why I use that analogy. That if you were, if you were trying to go out for the first time and build a house, it's similar to being the first time going out and trying to win or to run a business. And if somebody has put the blueprint, if somebody's put the framework, if somebody's explained to you and discussed it with you and said, you know, where do you want the bathroom? Where do you want the pipes? And that's what we do when we put ISO in place with people. We give them the framework. We talk about the best methods. We talk about best practice. We are in quite a treasured position as consultants because we see so many businesses. There's 60 of us within the business, within the UK in the field team, and we're seeing potentially 5 different businesses a week, so it soon mounts up. Most of us have been doing this for a number of years, so we genuinely have seen thousands and thousands of different businesses. We've seen really good ways of working, and unfortunately we've seen many that haven't worked so well. And we're able to impart that, we're able to build your management system in a way that's entirely right for you as a business, that makes it so it's achievable for you, that it's easy to run. And that's then giving you the streamlined way that you can operate your business. So you should see cost savings, you should see lots of benefits with regards to how smooth the business and how you continue to grow, and just a lot of organisation. It just gives you, if you like, that stability.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. There's one come in there. So Paul's saying, hi, when we tender, we tend to find that even though we have ISO 27001, 9001 and 14001, well done, they still require us to fill in a very long-winded questionnaire asking us the same questions. Could we say we are compliant and bypass the questionnaire?
Lovely question, Paul. My advice to you is probably not. If they're, you know, I think it is all about people becoming aware, people becoming educated, and we are starting to see that people will say, have you got 27,001, and then not ask you the long-winded questions. The downside is if you tick the box to say, yes, we've got it, here's our certificate, and then cross out the questionnaire, you could be shooting yourself in the foot, because when it actually gets to the office, they've got a perfect reason not to even pass yours on to the powers that be, because you haven't even filled in the questionnaire properly. So as much as I would love to sit there and say, yes, literally just write, we've got our certificate, don't bother asking us anymore, I think the reality is that you do have to go through that. But I think it is changing. We started to see ISO certificates actually counting, and ISO certificates being able to demonstrate compliance to get rid of a lot of the questions. And more tenders that I see when I'm working with clients will say things like, if you don't have it, go and fill the questionnaire in. But if you do have it, then you don't actually have to. So unfortunately, you're going to have to do them. They can be very frustrating. You're quite right there. But it's about, are we committed to this tender application? And if I was sitting there reading your tender submissions, if I found 10 people and a couple of them hadn't even filled in the questionnaire when I'd specifically asked them to, unfortunately, I'd use that against you. So that would be my advice.
Yep. No, absolutely. It's a bit of a risk. Okay. Brian said there, from what I've understood, experience is a key prerequisite. What chance does a non-experienced stand to win a tender?
When I said earlier on, I remember in 1998 going down to the library and submitting an application to be able to receive tenders. I was in that position. I was starting my first business. I had 1 day experience that day, and luckily the day after I had twice as much experience, so I was obviously learning quite quick. But the reality is, think about where you are in your journey. If you have no experience of the task that they're asking, then don't bother wasting your time applying. If you have lots of experience of doing the task but no experience of tender application writing, then that's about looking at what your skill set is and potentially bringing in someone to assist you. The other thing I would say is, think about starting small. There are lots of local authorities who will put quite small tenders. It might be 5,000 or 10,000, and it might be for a small project. It might be a 2 or 3 day project or a 10-day project or something. Dip your toe in, learn how the system works, understand how they work, understand the terminology they use. We all get frustrated with local authorities because they work in a different way to the commercial world, but actually, if we want to work with them, we have to be able to understand them. So my advice would be, if you have the experience of the task, but not tenders, start small and build up, and maybe use expert help on the bit that you're missing. If you don't have the experience of even doing the task, probably look at a different tender.
Yep. Thank you. Great. Thank you, Peter. Brilliant. Okay. Last one, I think, so I'm going to move on. Just got another couple of slides. How do we go about setting up ISOs? Was a question.
Well, the first thing would be to give us a call, and later on in the slide, I think the next slide or the final slide, we'll have a contact email address. Reach out to us, get in touch. As I said earlier, with the first stage of it is consulting, and that is very much about consult with you, understand your business, learn your business, and then we will work with you to build your management system that's right for you. So reach out wherever you are in that journey. If you're thinking that you are 6 months away from even wanting to start, feel free to reach out now, have the conversation, and we can talk about and explain in a lot more depth, one-to-one, what is right for your business. It might be that just ISO 9000 from a quality point of view is right for you in your journey at the moment. On the other hand, it might be that actually a different one or multiple ones are useful. The other thing I would say is, if you are looking at potentially more than one ISO, start the conversation early, because we can start to think about ways of integrating them to save you a lot of time and effort in the long term. I've had far too many clients over the years who go for one, and when they successfully achieve it, they phone you up and they say, I didn't realize it was going to be so straightforward, I now want to go for another one. And you say, well, maybe actually if we'd had this conversation 3 months ago, everything would have been straightforward. So feel free to have the conversation early, speak to us. As Flora said at the start of the presentation, we've done this 30,000 times. This isn't our first rodeo. Reach out and we'll be able to start that conversation.
Brilliant. Okay, and there we go. Why citation ISO certification?
So yeah, running through just the bits that are on the slide. Consultancy built in. We are pretty unique in the marketplace that not only do we do the consultancy to help you build your management system, but we're actually able to certify it as well. We do have experts in-house. There's 60 of us, but we don't all do everything. You know, I've got clients who need food safety, for example. It's not something I work with, but we have 3 or 4 people in the company who that's their entire background. When it comes to things like ISO 27001, that's my background. So that's one that I get heavily involved in. So we do have experts for certain standards. So that's one of the reasons for coming to us. We create the management system that works for you. I used to call them doorstop systems. I used to travel the length and breadth of the country. You'd see people have a management system and it was 15 lever arch files, and the only thing it was useful for was holding the door open. We're not interested in any of that anymore. We're interested in building a management system that's right for you, keeping it simple, keeping it straightforward, and allowing you, it says there, to achieve certification within 45 days. Please don't hold me to it. 45 days is normally from the point where we start consulting with you. It's not from when you phone up and start having a conversation. But 45 days is easily achievable for clients from when they start the consultation period, and you can have your certificate in place. The second one on there is part of something bigger. Some of the stuff, especially that Flora's talked about today with SSIP and SMAS and health and safety, you know, we're not just an ISO organisation. That's the part of the organisation that I spend my life with. But we've actually got over 2,000 people in the organisation now who are running things like the HR, the employment law, the health and safety stuff. You know, there is so much now going on, whether you want, you know, if you want to start doing background checks on any new employees, if you've got a food establishment and you need some assistance with that, as an organisation, it is a really big animal now, and we are able to offer a lot of help in a lot of different areas. And the last one on there is technology. You know, we talked about it earlier with regards to Atlas. I spent my morning actually talking about AI and the work that we're doing in-house to be able to implement AI, which was going to help our clients. So that we are definitely at the forefront. The amount of money, time, effort, resource that we're putting into our technology so that we're able to assist you guys, so that you don't have to worry about that. We can be that backbone for you. So yeah, they're the main reasons why we would suggest you work with us. And if we move on to the last slide, I won't read it word for word, but I'll just point to the very bottom of the slide in pink. Just get in touch with us, you know, phone, email. Some of the people on the call today I recognise I've worked with on multiple occasions. If you're already a client and you want something different, you want something additional, feel free to reach out. If you're brand new to us and you've never worked with us before, you can contact on the phone number there, or you can contact on the email address, and someone will get straight back to you and able to have that conversation about what's right for you. What have we got that actually assists you in running your business?
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Peter. We have learned lots today, I do not doubt, and it's been really, really useful. If anybody does have any further questions, we're not jumping off, so please feel free to pop them in there. Equally, if you do want further information on anything we've talked about today, or anything we've not talked about today as well, because we've, you know, focused it, then please do let us know. More than happy to, you know, follow up with you. Somebody will be giving you a little buzz just in a follow up. If you do want the recording and you're not a client, as a client, it'll go out in the monthly newsletter and is available to you on the on-demand section. If you're not a client and you do want the recording, then when somebody gives you a little buzz, then let them know that you want that, and we can ensure that that gets to you. But if you do want follow up now in the next day, or today, tomorrow, whatever else, just let us know. More than happy just to have a discussion with you about what your individual business needs are, because we're aware everybody's are quite different, obviously, because you're all running different businesses. So please do let us know, and we can pop that in for you and get that arranged, no problem at all. But thank you for joining us. I hope it has given you food for thought, not created too big a to-do list or whatever else. I'm sure it's created some though. But it's been a valuable session, hopefully, and thank you for taking the time out your day, because I know you're all very busy, for joining us as well. And thank you once again to yourself, Peter. Anything further from you?
No, I just want to thank everyone who joined the call. Thank you, Flora, for hosting, and I look forward to catching up with everyone after the call.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's great. And thank you for all the thank yous. I can see coming in there. Quite insightful, valuable, useful. Great. That's what we aim to achieve. So glad we've managed that today. And yeah, as I said, please do get in touch. The number's there. The email is there as well. So please make a note of that. And if you need anything at all, then do get in touch with us. And if MD specifically wants, because I know there's a couple of questions related to, how do you go about setting up an ISO, then if MD wants more information on that, just pop your details or just put a yes in the chat box there, and we will pick that up with you, no problem at all. When you go off today's webinar as well, there will be a very short survey. If you don't mind just completing that, it's just feedback for us really about how you felt about today's survey, and also anything else you want to see going forward as well. So we appreciate your input on that. So if you don't mind taking less than a minute to do that, it would be very much appreciated. Thanks, guys, and that will ping into you when you have logged off the webinar. So. But yeah, we'll hang around for another minute or so, just in case anybody does have any further questions. More than happy to take them. Or if you want to put a date in your diary, then please don't hesitate just to let me know, and I can get that arranged for you, no problem at all.